And welcome back to the Pod of Many Things, the weekly chilled out roundtable tabletop RPG podcast brought to you by me, Addison, your favourite resident friendly Furbolg wizard, and my co-host, as per usual, the amazing Bard Officer, making sure that you can hear us all in glorious stereo. Leon, how you doing, Leon? How's your week been?
It's Leon in the house. The week has been good. It is a Thursday right now, and I think it's been a very productive week so far. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, and so
you, Addison. I feel like nobody ever asks how you are.
It's because I'm the host. Yeah, I've been all right. I've been talking to a lot of people. We've been very productive, and one of those people I've been talking to this week is who's on with us today. Talking about other systems, because believe it or not, despite what Twitter, YouTube and Facebook might tell you, there are other tabletop RPG systems out there other than Dungeons and Dragons.
There's other I was almost going to say there's other D&D systems. There's other RPG systems.
And I brought my friend, who I know knows a lot about other RPG systems, has been a champion of other RPG systems for a long time. Our friend from the Flickering Torch, Ben. Ben, how you doing?
Hello, I'm doing really great. Thanks for having me, guys. Really excited to preach the good word.
Preach the good word, because I know what's coming. I know what's coming. I know that there's a sales pitch for a certain game coming, because me and Ben have attended the same RPG club for quite some time, and it's like his catchphrase. But before we get into that, Ben, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself, your history in tabletop RPGs, and then we would, if you're down for it, really love to play the Avatar game with you, where we discuss what characterized Avatar you are, whereas Leon's the half-orc Bard Officer now, I'm the Furbolg Wizard. What would you be? And as it's other systems, we'll let you choose classes and stuff from other systems that you know. So tell us about yourself.
So, I'm Ben. I run the Flickering Torch over on YouTube. It's kind of like a how to play different systems, mixed in with sort of some opinion pieces, and a podcast that occasionally runs. Hasn't run for a few weeks now. I've been playing RPGs for like 6 years. I say I started in 5e, but I don't think I actually did. I think I started trying to DM using... if you ever had those pick your own adventure books, the fighting fantasy ones?
Yeah. I watch kids read them at work, so yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Goosebumps ones. I was so into the Goosebumps ones.
We the fighting fantasy.
Was it Goosebumps? Yeah, it is Goosebumps, isn't
it? There was a Goosebumps Choose Your Own Adventure, but there were other ones like fighting fantasy.
It feels like a fever dream. Anyway.
Sorry.
No, back to you.
Like Fighting fantasy. We'll just keep talking.
I'm so sorry. I've completely ruined your flow.
I can't see your mouth moving because of your mic in the way.
Yeah, you're literally you're
really close to the mic for it to pick up my audio.
Is it kind of?
So I'll talk like this.
So yeah, Ben, fighting fantasy.
That came with like a whole character sheet. So the first RPG I tried to run was I tried to modify that so we could play it like as an RPG because I was cheap, didn't want to buy 5e, and then I bought 5e, and then I quickly grew tired of running the same kinds of adventures. I looked at different things, different systems, mostly so I could get kind of different genres, because I really like pretty much anything that I'm watching on TV at the time. I want to run the RPG of that, so I kind of looked into it.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah, I kind of looked into other systems and tried to find things that have different tones and feels. The Avatar game, I guess. How does this start? How do we do this?
So we're going to look at first. Let's ask round and talk about what other systems we've played apart from 5e, which I'm not going to admit. I'll start and I'll say is very minimal. I've played the D20 system, Mutants and Masterminds, and I've played the custom Poke-Roll Pokemon RPG, which was very weird.
Is this the Avatar game? We've skipped the Avatar game.
I was going to let him go with his flow and then bring it up later.
Because of the fact that Avatar's in the other systems. My bad. Okay, so the Avatar game. Oh, fuck this, don't I? It's because of the pussy.
No pressure. No pressure, Addison, but every time you fuck it up, it means more editing for me.
Okay, right. So the Avatar game. We'll start from there.
I could just leave it all in.
Yeah. Fuck it. Fuck it. The Avatar game basically is based on your answers. We talk about what we think you are. So Leon, I know Ben quite well, but based on his answers of what he said about his opinion pieces and the Flickering Torch, where he's like trying to branch out and tell people about these other systems, what sort of race and class do you think that Ben would fall into for our avatars?
Will I offend you, Ben, if I use a D&D race and class?
I think 5e's totally cool, as long as it's one of the main races from the player's handbook, because otherwise I haven't read it.
Okay, well, you're quite clearly a bard. You have a YouTube channel, and you like to tell stories that you have seen in other media through the medium of tabletop RPGs. So that leads me to your race. Do I detect a bit of an accent there? What's your accent?
I've got kind of a dog accent, but originally from Wakefield, then I moved to Northampton and picked most of that up. So
Wakefield, eh?
Okay.
All right. Okay. I'm gonna go. I've actually done a lot of work in Wakefield, but I'm gonna go dwarf.
Dwarf bard or dwarf, as we sometimes.
Dwarf.
The dwarf.
Yeah, I feel like people in
I was going to actually
Wakefield
say due to
are very dwarfy.
I was going to say human because of his adaptability, because that's something that's talked about quite a lot in the player's handbook, about the fact that humans are adaptable, like they can change based on where they are and Ben plays a lot of different systems and likes to learn a lot of different systems. You can see people watching the podcast won't be able to see it, but we can see on his shelf that there's a few books on there from so I think that he's quite adaptable. And
Okay,
I would probably say...
Can I change my answer then?
What's that?
I'm going to change my answer based on what you said. So I'm going to go for a bard changeling.
Bard changeling?
Yeah.
Okay. I was actually going to go something like human paladin because of his like a belief in like that people, because you kind of, when we talk about other RPGs, you think that it's something that's really important that other people experience other RPGs apart from just D&D. When we were in the club together, one of your main, like, I suppose, platforms, apart from like digital media and stuff, was actually, why do we just run 5e? Like, that's not helpful. Other people might want to play things like Starfinder or Powered by the Apocalypse and stuff. So I thought human paladin. What would you go for, Ben? What do you think?
I think you've both been very kind to me there. I was going to go for a dwarf. So we all know what a dwarf is. Kind of stubborn. I think Addison definitely knows I'm kind of stubborn.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of hairy. So definitely a dwarf. But I was going to choose a different system for my class. I was going to choose Shadowrun and a Decker, because I spend most of my time staring at a screen. So I think a hacker type character is way up my alley as a programmer.
Nice. I like it. So you are, for this episode, you are Ben, the Dwarf Decker. You are the DD.
The double D, baby.
The double D. So, to kick off this podcast about other systems then, I think a good thing to start with is what other systems we've played, and making a bit of a list, talking about them, what we liked about them. So then we can move on to the next point on my little roadmap, which is what do we look for in other systems when we get there. How about we start with Leon, because my list is going to be short, and so we'll go Leon, Ben, then me. Leon, what other systems have you played apart from D&D?
One day I will read the script before the podcast and prepare some answers, because I never do, and you always leave me on the spot. But the ones that spring to mind, Star Wars RPG. It's a fantastic system, and I think probably the best RPG system. The only problem with that is there's never anybody that wants to play it, because everybody always wants to play D&D. What else have I played? Vampire the Masquerade is another fantastic system.
Ben looks like he's going to shed a tear.
Oh, I've got the rule
God.
book sat there. It's the most beautiful, beautiful rule book. I almost did it. Most beautiful rule book I've ever seen in my life. Oh.
It is nice. I was this close to buying it at the Games Expo, but the price was just very difficult to justify.
The price is so high, but it's so worth it, Leon. You got to do it.
They kind of have to put it that high because it comes with a disc, doesn't it? So you can download the actual PDF, which other publishers should consider doing as well, rather than requiring you to have an internet connection to view the media.
Leon has some strong feelings about that. Other systems than Leon, before you get on your soapbox.
Just give me a fucking PDF. Those are the ones that spring to mind at the moment. I've run a Mass Effect short block of games, but however that was based entirely on 5e. There was an Adventure Time system, which was interesting. It was terrible, but it was interesting. And I can't think of anything else. There's more in there, but those are the ones that spring to mind. If I can't remember any others, it's because I have bad memories of them.
Fair enough. Ben, being our other systems expert, what have you played?
Okay, played
or read that you want to play? What have you dipped your toe into?
What have I dipped my toe into? So obviously, Fighting Fantasy, already mentioned. 5e, obviously. Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition. Basically, I keep playing old systems because they're cheap. So we've got Shadowrun 3rd edition. It is the most 80s/90s game you will ever read and play. The system is awful, but all the flavor text is beautiful. I own splat books for that I'm never gonna read. I'm never gonna play with, but I've read because they're just hilarious. Like Rollerblade Feet. Who thought that was a good idea?
Aged well, that one. Aged well. We've got the combat wheelchair on Twitter argument. So.
Oh, I did see the combat wheelchair.
Yeah. So
this morning I woke up to a notification from the same guy who said orcs are racist because orcs are black people, and I was thinking, fuck's sake, Twitter, why are you recommending this to me? Same guy.
Because you had a fight with him, Leon. So yeah.
Fuck that guy.
So we've got Shadowrun. What else, Ben?
We've got the Game of Thrones role-playing game that I played for quite a fun campaign. Don't buy that, it's bad. We've got Dungeon World. We've got my current Moby Dick White Whale game, which is Knights Black Agents, which is Jason Bourne versus vampires, that I will be running a stream of at some point in the future. Stay tuned for that. We've got Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. That book is sex in print. Oh my god. It's like printed like a glossy magazine. All the art, and it's like cosplay. Oh, it's so good. Like I would recommend you paying the £50 just to own it as a relic. And then we've got the good book. I have to mention this. The best one-shot system ever designed. Probably the best D20 system. That's Index Card RPG by Runehammer Games, also known as Drunkens and Dragons on YouTube. That system is beautiful, and I've bitten Addison's ear off talking about it on many an occasion.
Yeah, it's literally like he holds it. You know how like Mormons and shit hold the Bible when they talk to you, when they're trying to convert you. He literally holds it like that, like to his chest, like, oh, I see RPG's so good. Like, why does no one want to play? So yeah. But you sound like you've looked at a lot of stuff. I've looked at some things, but in terms of playing, I'm mainly D&D 5e, but I've played like this weird Pokemon role-play thing called PokeRoll. I've played Leon's Mass Effect game, which I would say changed the mechanics enough to almost make it a new system. There was a lot of new stuff.
It's a very solid system, and it's free. You can go online. It has this amazing interactive DMG/PHB. It's a fantastic system.
Power Rangers Hyperforce, which is a D6 system, which is pretty cool. But you kind of have to scavenge around for the rules on the internet because the official rule book they promised us almost a year ago, 2 years ago now, never materialized. So I'm like, okay. And then my probably second favorite after D&D is Mutants and Masterminds. Although where the first time you play Mutants of Masterminds, you don't play Mutants of Masterminds properly. You just play it and then you start like because it's just you think, oh, it's just a D20 system. That will make everything so much easier. But with how things work, there are so many like penalties and like additions and bonuses that it's not easier. Like, but rolls get ridiculously high also really quickly. So like if you have like plus 11 in something and you roll 18, you're on 29. Like, and it's in degrees of failure. So, and there's like the first time you play, you just roll d20s for a long time, and then you go, okay, now I need to actually learn the rules properly. So I've played like 4. Our friend Troy runs a Pokemon game, which is based in 5e, but you play as the trainers, as your like social characters, but the battles are conducted by Pokemon. It kind of changes the dynamic of 5e, which is quite interesting. But yeah, that's it. I very rarely stroll out of 5e because I am a creature of habit. So yeah.
I would love to take some very long strolls out of 5e. The problem is finding people that want to play something other than 5e.
Hello, I'm here. I didn't even mention the RPG that an entire shelf is devoted to behind me.
Oh yeah,
Finland.
It's very true.
The second good book. But yeah, no. So those are the things we've played, and if we think about it, what did we like about those systems? What do you guys like about those systems? And that will gradually transition us to our second topic: is what do we look for in other systems when we go outside of D&D? What makes us want to play a new system and stuff like that? So, Ben, if you want to start that conversation, what do you like about the systems you've listed?
So often I go for something rules light because I like to be able to like breeze through a rule book and kind of know what I'm doing. But I think like a big factor is often like the mechanics matching a certain tone. So if we take Forbidden Lands for an example, that's trying to have this tone of like a very gritty fantasy adventure that you don't really get from D&D because it's such high magic levels in D&D, and in Forbidden Lands you kind of have this like really low magic, and if you're casting it, you're like pretty much gonna screw yourself over because it's sort of this like evil demonic force, and I think those kind of systems where it's like they've chosen a theme, they've chosen a genre. They're going to focus in on that, and all the mechanics kind of complement that. I think D&D is excellent, but it paints a very broad brush for me, where it's trying to be multiple things at once. And I think a lot of those things, if you wanted to play specifically for one of those things, you could find a better game for. I also buy systems that have just got interesting mechanics, so I've got Fantasy Age set on the back shelf there that I've read and I will never run a game of, but I thought it looked interesting, so I've read the whole thing. But it's really, if it nails a tone and a theme, and it's kind of similar to the tone and the theme of the TV show I'm watching, then yeah, I'm going to pick it up, I'm going to read it, I'm going to see if I can run my own version of, let's say, the Umbrella Academy, whatever.
That's a good point. I think that when I look at the things that I've run, they're franchises that are dear to my heart. So like Power Rangers is like one of my guiltiest pleasures still as an adult, as like a 27-year-old man. Like, part of me would still love to be a Power Ranger, like, and have the helmet and everything. So when they made that RPG for that stream, it blew my mind. It was like the best thing ever for me. I was like, oh, I get to be a Power Ranger? That's insane. So yeah, I can definitely see what you mean by like, does it match what I love, what I like at the moment of stuff. And that's one of the reasons why I'm checking out the Persona RPG now, because I've just finished Persona 5. So I'm like,
super interesting.
I've got the PDFs because it's free. And it's really simplified, like D&D basically. But yeah, no, like, I definitely get that.
Is it still a D20 system?
Yeah, it's still D20. It's just really heavily simplified.
I have to look at that because the Persona world is really interesting, right? It's like you're half the time a school kid and then half the time in like nightmares or something.
Yeah, so it depends what game you're in, but there's always like a light novel element to it where you go to school and you interact with your party members and like you give them gifts and stuff, almost like a dating simulator, as some people jokingly call it. And then you go onto this extreme dungeon crawl at night, like when and it depends. It's either this evil tower in Persona 3. It's an evil tower that appears at midnight. In Persona 4, it's a TV station that you literally go into TVs, and in Persona 5, it's a sat nav that takes you to people's like inner psyche. Like it's really fucking weird. It's so fun, but it's so weird at the same time. It's really hard to explain. And basically, yeah,
a system that can handle both of those seems like really difficult to pull off. But if that's a good system, like. I totally want to read that. That sounds super interesting.
I also think that it kind of breaks my heart a little bit that you said the Game of Thrones RPG shit. Like I was like so down for that. What about you, Leon? What do you like about the things that you've played, and what are you looking for when you decide to break out the D&D 5e box?
You know, playing D&D 5e and doing the same system day in, day out, it does get incredibly boring. And the 5e system itself, it's designed to allow you to be anything and do anything, which is a bit to its detriment, because a system that allows you to do everything is a bit of a jack of all trades and a master of none, I think. And the reason I say this is because I just thought of another system which I've had some fantastic fun playing. It was DM'd by a really good friend, Vince, who is sadly no longer with us, but he was such a great person. He introduced me to loads of different RPGs, but the one that I think that he showed us, which was my favorite, was one called 7th Sea. If any of you, if either of you are familiar with that.
7th Sea.
Yeah.
Yes. It's such a good system. Essentially, what it is, it's a swashbuckling system. So the whole system is designed specifically for you to be a pirate, be a sailor, be a voodoo person, and it's fantastic. And because it's specifically a swashbuckling sea-based campaign, all of the mechanics are geared towards that. So you can really focus on what it is that you want to do in that kind of aspect, rather than using 5e rules to try and adapt them to any kind of situation. Like before Ghosts of Saltmarsh came out, you know, you couldn't really do anything in 5e unless you homebrewed it all yourself or you bought some materials off of DM's Guild. So yeah, to answer the question, what I really like is having something that's a little bit more focused than the catch-all that 5e tries to be.
Fair enough. I think that's a good point. I think we should definitely go into a bit more about that, about the catch-allness of D&D 5e and the power fantasy of D&D 5e versus some other systems. So, Ben, you mentioned a white whale system that you've not been able to play yet. What was that called again? Sorry, you mentioned it. I liked it, but
yeah. Knights Black Agents is essentially like Jason Bourne versus vampires, and you definitely couldn't run Jason Bourne versus vampires in 5e.
Yeah, and I've got my white whale system. It's a system called Dread, and basically instead of dice, you use a Jenga Tower to decide checks.
Yeah, Dread has always super interested me. Like, I don't know how well it would actually like play at the table.
It's definitely one you have to have an atmospheric thing for. Like, it has to be something that you proper immerse in, because so for those of you who don't know, and one of the reasons, I'll get back to why I'm talking about this in a second. So Dread is a basically horror movie, the RPG. Like there are, and basically to make your character, you fill out a questionnaire about your character and you answer it in character. And you can create the questionnaires. It's got some examples of questionnaires and some examples of adventures. And it's just this really, really interesting premise. And I think that's one of the things that when we talk about the catch-allness of D&D 5e, that's something I think you really struggle with in D&D 5e. Like, everybody's like, well, Curse of Strahd does horror. And I'm like, but when I can fireball everything, it's not actually that scary. if that makes sense. Like, there's the fear of death, but like the fear of like what's happening and the atmosphere and everything is really hard to recreate. So dread.
On that, I'm with you on that. The thing is with Curse of Strahd is I hated DMing it because it was very hard to make it scary. D&D just by nature leans towards fun, jokes, laughing, etc., etc. It's very hard to capture that. It's very hard.
Yeah. So dread, it is like literally like the teenagers breaking down in the middle of the cornfields in rural Texas, being chased by something or each other. Like there's some crazy things you can pull off with dread, and it even says how to pull them off in the player's book, which is actually really small. And one of the things I've always wanted to play off is like psychological horror. Like I made a Halloween game once, which I was going to run in Dread, which was basically all these people turn up to their psychiatrist's office because they all get the same text message. It basically devolves into like this murder mystery of who's killed the
sounds really
the psychologist. But there's some crazy things going on in the psychologist's office. Like one of the psychologist's methods was about masks. So like I was going to get all the people to wear like masks for like a good portion of it, because their thing was like you put the mask on and that separates you from your thing. It's like an actual psychological theory. So I thought, this can bring in some really cool real world like horror and psychological horror in. And like I said, when you can just fireball shit in D&D, you can't do that. Is there anything else we feel like D&D can't do that other systems can do? And can we make a solid link between a system and that thing? Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, I think one of the powerful things about...
You go first.
Thank you. I think one of the really powerful things about using another system is your players don't, especially if you're using something not well known, they don't really have the same expectation. Like if you have played 5e, you've got all of the weight of all the other 5e games you've played. So if you've been playing funny campaigns and you go into Curse of Strahd, you're going to be in that mindset. Whereas if you've signed up for a game of Dread, you've signed up for a very specific experience, and you're going to go into the game with that mindset. And I think that's super powerful. And especially when all the mechanics sort of fit that. I know my main gripe with Dread is I think the Jenga Tower would be kind of distracting, but I totally get that like it's a tension builder. Like as a concept, I think that's super cool. I think you should also look into 10 Candles. I think that'd be right up your alley as well. Where you're like burning your character sheet,
Holy shit, you actually burn your character sheet. That's amazing.
I think that's 10 Candles, or 10 Candles might be the one where you blow a candle out. But I was reading about this game where you have your character sheet, and as you're doing actions, you have to burn your character sheet. So you see like throughout the game, you're like the tension's building because you've got less and less of your character sheet there to use. So everything's
that's so good.
and I quite like that because I think you could like play that around a campfire and it would be super intense. And my one gripe with Dread is I don't think you could set it up around a campfire, and I think a horror game would work insanely well. Just in the middle of the woods with all your friends and the campfire's going, and you're like sat there burning your character sheet, and you're like, I've only got a corner left. And that axe murderer's in my house, and he's about to open the cupboard. What am I doing here? I've only got this small, I think you can have certain mechanics that really like are very evocative and sort of invoke like a very specific theme and feeling. And I think that's what's super exciting about other systems. Whereas, 5e works pretty excellent as a power fantasy kind of generic fantasy game.
It's very vanilla. I get that.
Yeah, and I think like once you learn the power of bringing another system and how you can use that as sort of like another part of your sort of GMing, you can be like, well, I want to like run Conan stories, so maybe I'll run Forbidden Lands because everyone's a little bit underpowered. But then like also on the other side of the spectrum, you're like, I want a power fantasy like funny game, I'll run 5e. And I think having those other systems sort of in your tool belt is super useful to you as a GM.
What about you, Leon? Is there anything like you think the catch-all of D&D is misses out on that something better represents, like another system better represents?
Not off the top of my head. But I do want to just throw in a little anecdote here. I have actually used a Jenga tower in a game before. I can't remember. It was so long ago exactly what the scenario and the story was. But basically, whenever a saving throw was failed and they were navigating through something, they had to come and pull a brick out of the tower. And whenever the tower fell, it meant they would get attacked by whatever monster was following them. If they got a natural 1, then me, as the DM, gleefully got to just smack down the tower, which was fun. But with the Jenga tower, if you've played Jenga, you'll know Jenga's a very intense thing. And I do think it did add that layer of intensity that I wanted to the game. However, that said, I don't think it added any horror to the game because, again, if you've played Jenga, when you're pulling out that brick and the whole tower starts to shake, you're not scared. You are tense, and it becomes like a laughing moment. You're like, oh, is it going to come out? Is it going to fall? And the horror that you're trying to build completely goes away, but the intensity is still there. The tension.
Dread has this cool thing in that the fact it actually tells you that as the GM, you're supposed to badger them as they take stuff out of the tower. And
okay.
Like you're supposed to remind them, like he's coming. Like you hear the footsteps coming, and you've got to go quickly, and you've got to move, and like you basically put them on the clock. And you basically have to keep reminding them of why they're making the pull. Basically, is what it's called. It's called making a pull. Yeah. Also, can I just register
6 weeks?
What's that? Sorry.
It's about 6 weeks to Halloween. So what's everybody doing in about 6 weeks' time?
We'll see if I can manage it and I can sort it out.
That's okay. I'm sure Ben would love to DM it.
Yeah. I also want to register a gripe, by the way. Ben kind of picked up on it earlier about like D&D lends itself to funny campaigns. Yeah, like.
Yes.
But as a DM, can I just say, right? If I'm trying to set up a fucking moment, guys, right? If I'm trying to set up an atmosphere and a moment, and you crack a fucking joke, you are no longer funny. You're just being a dick. Like I hate that. I hate that so much. When I'm there, like you feel your heart thumping, and somebody just goes, "Ooh, what's that in my bum?" or something like that, because they can't deal with it. Like I hate that so much. Like, or who's touching me in the dark? Like they make some sort of like stupid joke, and that's why like I feel like horror has to have its own RPGs, because there's always that one person at the table who, if you try and build that up in D&D as well, they're always going to crack a joke, and it's like, why are you ruining the immersion for everyone? Like, I don't know. What do you guys think of that?
In a horror movie, the person that does crack the jokes always ends up dying, so that's the person you want to target in the game. Oh, a werewolf comes out of the bush and bites your fucking head off. Please leave the table.
Yeah, it's just so that I've talked to a couple of other people about it, and I wanted to see what you guys thought, and whether you thought that was why horror has specific tabletop RPG games.
I think like a big part of that is maybe like prepping your players and letting them know, like, if I'm going for a moment, you crack that joke, might be funny now, but you gotta make that saving throw. You better believe that DC gets higher, boy.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with people making jokes at tense moments. It's just something that people do, isn't it? I can understand why it's annoying, but you're around a table with your friends, you're there to have fun. People are going to make jokes. When I first started, it was something that would have annoyed me, but as I've become more experienced, got more relaxed, I don't give a fuck anymore, to be honest.
Fair enough. I didn't know whether that was a reason why horror had its own tabletop RPGs.
I do think horror deserves its own RPG though. I don't think 5e is equipped for it in the same way that before Ghost of Saltmarsh came out, it wasn't really equipped for naval campaigns, battles, whatever.
I think every kind of like micro genre should really have its own kind of system going for it.
Absolutely.
if you want to play like
5e is just high fantasy. That's it.
Yeah.
That's
and
it.
People
it's not
try and get it to do everything else. And if you've got a good GM, no matter what the system, you're gonna have a blast, and they're gonna like be able to play it off. But I think it really enhances it if your rule set is helping you along the way. So like if you were running a sci-fi game, yeah, you could run it in 5e, but it might be like way more fun for everyone involved if you were to run it in like Starfinder or The Expanse RPG.
Yeah.
So that's why we don't have Spelljammer yet.
We don't have Dark Sun yet, and that's the only thing that will let me to play 5e again. You hear that, Wizards of the Coast? Release my Dark Sun.
I'm with Leon. I'm with Leon in the fact that I'd take Spelljammer over Dark Sun. Like, Spelljammer and Plane Chase, like, game on, man.
Nobody wants these Magic the Gathering settings. We want Dark Sun and we want Spelljammer.
Is there now 2 Magic the Gathering settings? What is going on?
There's 3. You've got Eberron, you've got Theros, and you've got Ravnica.
Yeah.
Eberron isn't Magic the Gathering, is it? It's like old school AD&D, isn't it?
It's a bit of both. Eberron is also in. Oh no, actually, Eberron's not.
It's old school D&D.
Never mind. And there's just 2. Let's hopefully leave it at 2.
You know what? Until I get Dark Sun, 2 is too goddamn many. I'll tell you that. Wizards of the Coast. Every time you post a form and it says Dark Sun on, I click the Dark Sun button. Give me Dark Sun. I will pay you money. It's easy. Just grab the 4E Dark Sun books and just re-release them and change any pluses to advantage. It's fine. I don't care. Just give me Dark Sun.
Okay then, speaking of like settings,
that is getting clipped up into a video.
Yeah. With like speaking of settings and stuff, and Ben kind of hinted at it when he talked about like TV shows, and I said about it with Power Rangers and stuff like that. A lot of like franchises are moving into the tabletop space, not just in terms of RPG, but the gaming sphere. And we begin to see almost like a transition from not just video games, where franchises are focused on primarily, but they're starting to release their own like D&D killers and all that jazz. So is there any other like franchise that we've seen succeed in the tabletop RPG space? Is there any franchise that we'd like to see in the tabletop RPG space? Leon, you've got your hand up.
Answer this question. A light bulb just went before we answer this question. A light bulb just went off in my head. You just called things D&D killers, which made me instantly think of when games back in the day were referred to as COD killers.
Oh yeah.
So D&D is the Call of Duty of the tabletop RPG world.
It fits so well.
It does fit well though. It fits so good.
Oh my god.
Every quarter you get that D&D book drop, like
yeah, the DLC.
Yeah.
It's kind of bland, but everyone plays it. They keep just adding new shit on top, and you have to play with all the other shit, and it kind of doesn't make sense, but it's fine. You just want to play Modern Warfare 2, but you have to play the one with goddamn robots.
So let's look at what franchises. Let's start with what franchises we think have succeeded in this. What franchises have come into the tabletop RPG space and done well, and then we'll talk about what we would like to see in the RPG space. So what's done well, Leon? Tell me what you think's done well in the tabletop RPG space as a franchise.
Easy. Star Wars. Star Wars is one of the best systems for an RPG that I've come across. It's fantastic. It's very... Sorry?
Narrative version, or is that the D6 version of old?
The Genesis system.
Genesis. Yeah, I love that one. That's so fun.
It's so good. It's so good. For those that don't know, it's kind of like D6, D8 are the main dice that you use on your character sheet. You'll have different skills. And based on your level of proficiency in those skills, you'll have X amount of D6s that you can roll. For like, what do you have after proficiency? For expertise, you'll have X amount of D8s that you can add to your roll. And like if you want to do something like, say you want to climb over a wall, what you would do is you'd take the most appropriate skill, roll those dice. However, there are things that can not make you roll less dice, but can subtract from your dice. So you go to climb this wall, you have your pool of dice. There'll be a second pool of dice. So the wall is 10 foot high. It's really high. So we're going to put on another d6, and if that d6 rolls higher than any of your d6s, we take one of yours away. It's also raining, so we're going to add another d6 to the negative dice pool. There's also a dog chasing you, so we're going to add another d6. So there's now 3 d6 working against your d6.
Is it always competitive? Is it always competitive like that? Like
yes,
yes. Okay.
But you do notice there's like a box you could climb up instead of trying to climb the actual wall itself. So you use the box. So you can add another d6 to your pool. So you've got these 2 poles, you roll, cancel all the dice out, and depending on how many positive dice you're left with or negative dice you're left with, that determines whether or not you've succeeded or failed. It's such a good system, and I love it. It really allows you. Sorry?
Is there degrees of success in that? Like,
just thinking from memory, I don't think there's degrees of
triumphs, right? That's like
yeah. So that's the D10 dice, isn't it?
You can get triumph, which is like a critical hit, and then you can get advantage, which is like kind of like degrees of success. You get extra bonuses towards your.
Yes, it's coming back to me now.
Exactly succeeded. You can have a failure with advantage and stuff like that, I believe.
The thing I really like about it, instead of D&D, where you just set a difficulty check. Well, the DM sets the difficulty check. Both the DM for Star Wars and the player, you can work together to have a look at the circumstances around the action that you're trying to undertake, rather than just, thinking of this flat number and rolling against that.
I really like that system, but I would prefer to play that with a digital dice roller every time, because those.
I've only ever played a digital.
Yeah, so
I would hate to play it with physical dice.
Yeah, we were playing it with physical dice at the club because I was running they've got like a Force Awakens box set.
Mm-hmm.
It's not very intuitive to like cancel things out quickly, like when you're playing it like in person. But like I think with a digital dice roller, that system could be insane. Or maybe if you had like
I played it on Roll20, which has its own character sheet specifically for Star Wars.
Yeah, I imagine that's really cool. I think like if you could somehow read the dice that landed on like a dice tray and it told you all that shit, that would be really cool. Like if they could figure the technology behind that out, that would make that system amazing, because then I'd get the physical dice, but I wouldn't have to read them.
Fair enough. The combative nature of the dice rolls kind of reminds me of Power Rangers Hyperforce, because everything's contested in Power Rangers Hyperforce. So you and the DM roll off against each other, and you get different amounts of d6s depending on the state of your character. So obviously, unmorph, you're going to get less dice than you would if you were morphed. So if you're in your Power Ranger suit, you get 2 d6s. If you're in your Zord, you get 3 d6s. If you get in the Megazord, depending on who's piloting, there's a whole thing, and then basically the DM rolls certain dice depending on the action being undertaken, what monsters attacking and stuff like that. So that I kind of get that. Ben, do you think there's any particular franchise that has succeeded in coming into the tabletop RPG space?
Star Wars definitely. This isn't necessarily a franchise, but it's like a system that I'm really enjoying right now. Year Zero, they've got like a bunch of different products using the same like dice system. It's the same one that Forbidden Lands uses, but they've got like a few games now that are using the same dice system, where you basically like you roll a number of d6 that's like your abilities is one color, your skills is another, and then your gear is another. And if you get 6s, any amount of 6s are a success. If you get 1s, they don't count for anything on your first roll, but there's this thing where you can push your roll. So you roll the first time. If you don't succeed, you can push it, but then any 1s that show up on certain dice like hinder you negatively. But it's a really cool system because you know exactly what's failed you. Like, maybe my raw strength helped me like cleave this goblin in twain, or maybe I was about to miss that ledge, but my boots my like hiker's boots just caught us before we were about to fall. Or maybe that when I swung my sword, that's what broke, and that's why I didn't kill the monster. Like it really helps the GM narrate, but you can also then like put it on the players. Like you know your sword broke. So how did that happen? So the Year Zero system for me is like the best sort of system that's been put in a lot of different games right now.
I think that one of the ones that always sticks out.
Some games with you, Ben.
Yeah.
What was that? Sorry.
I need to play some games with you.
Well, yeah, you got invited
to learn some of these
Black
systems
Agents, but I think
about.
you're busy, right?
I did. Yeah, I've got 2 games going on, plus the podcast.
Maybe we'll get you on as a guest.
Ooh, I would be 100% down for that.
You literally come on as Jason Bourne.
Literal Jason Bourne.
Yeah. I think when the
I arrive in my e-bussy.
modular minivan.
Thank you for explaining the joke to everyone who wasn't in the conversation before, because that sounds horrific otherwise.
So one of the games that I think stands out to me as a franchise that's really somehow managed to do well in the tabletop RPG space is Lovecraft, and obviously Call of Cthulhu. I think Call of Cthulhu, having never played it, has always piqued my curiosity in the fact that it's so entrenched in that lore, plus percentile dice. Like using percentile dice to do everything is kind of weird, but yeah, that always stood out to me.
Sorry, there are some other systems that do a similar thing to Call of Cthulhu, like Trial of Cthulhu. You might want to look into something like that, because as much as Call of Cthulhu is really cool, I actually think the rolling to find clues can like stall something real quick.
Yeah. But I think the thing that always got me was one of the reasons why I picked up Mutants and Masterminds, actually, is the fact that DC Comics at one point had an official Mutants and Masterminds supplement where you could just play as the Justice League. Like, it gave you the character sheets for all of them. Like, every single one, from the 90s cartoon to the comics. It was insane. And it gave you like different I think there was a section based on, like, was it Kingdom Come? Like there was a game that was in the book that was based on the Kingdom Come universe. So the fact that superheroes, like, it was basically DC Civil War before Marvel did Civil War, and it was insane. So that always stuck out to me, and I'm really annoyed that I didn't buy it when I first saw it, because it was around the time when I was first getting into D&D. I was like, oh, this seems really weird, but it looks really cool, but I'm learning to play D&D, so I can't afford to like diverge from that path. And now any book for that collection is now worth hundreds of pounds because they do not print it anymore. So I'm like, no, my heart.
Oh, man, you fucked up big time.
Yeah, I'm like, what franchises then? We've talked about franchises that stick out to us that we think have succeeded. What franchises would we like to move into the tabletop RPG space and we think would do well? So this can be movies, TVs, comics, book series, whatever you want. You have full license by some miracle to create any RPG based on any IP that you want. Ben's got his hand up, so I'm feeling like he's got
can
one.
I go, instead of for a specific franchise, a genre?
Yeah, okay, sure, genre.
I want a musical RPG. Like, I want to be able to play Hamilton, I want to be able to play Sweeney Todd. I don't know how you would do it. I'm not even sure if it's physically possible.
You and Jenny could get on so well right now. Jenny's beating heart. She'd be there like, can I play the Heathers? Like, she'd be there like. So yeah,
that would be so fun. Like, you have to like I imagine you would have to have some kind of digital tool that gave you like the first half of the song, and then you had to like fill in the blank, like Mad Libs kind of style could work.
That could be fun.
I think there's got to be some way of doing it, and it would just I need that.
You have to use the appropriate song at the. You have to use the appropriate song at the appropriate time, though. So if you're playing Aaron Burr and you're about to ambush somebody, you have to sing.
If you can figure it out, you can do an amazing Kickstarter on that.
I think
Get all the
work
money.
like Fiasco style, and then maybe it's got like Mad Lib songs in it. Like, there's got to be some way of doing it, and I think it would be glorious.
That is fucking insane. It's so good. Like, that's such.
That was my controversial pick.
Oh man,
yeah.
I don't know if I can. I don't know. I feel kind of dumb now for mine. I'm gonna let Leon go first on this one because I don't want to be slaughtered.
Yeah, that's a difficult one to follow, but I can think of two things. Whether or not they would be successful, I don't know, but they are two things that I would love to play. First one being Umbrella Academy. If there isn't one already, I think that could make a fantastic RPG. Second one,
talk to me.
Maybe run that in Fiasco.
Bear with me on this. Breaking Bad.
Of being a drug maker.
So,
yeah, I just want to live out my fantasies of
in the suburbs
becoming a terrifying drug baron. Okay, that's it. That's it. I don't want to do it in 5e. I don't want to do it in some fantasy world. I want it set in the real world.
So you don't necessarily want
in the suburbs. I want it to be dirty. I want it to be gritty. Okay, I want to have to hide from police all the time. I want to have to go to war with rival gangs. I think that would be fantastic.
What about pizza on the roof?
I mean, there should absolutely be a mechanic for the nagging wife. And there's plenty of options you can take with that nagging wife. Do you bring her in the business?
I'm sure.
Do you fob her off? Do you get rid of her? Do you give her a set of cement boots? There's plenty of different things you could do with that, and this could all be written into the campaign.
What would be the role to throw a pizza on the roof? That's my question.
Yes,
Heisenberg.
Make a pizza throwing roll. Roll to eat.
Have I got a proficiency in pizza? Is that my preferred weapon?
No, actually, those are two really good ones. The musical one is still like
that's a DC 30.
You can almost bring out that because now I'm thinking about it, it's still in the back of my mind. You can bring out like that Disney princess-esque like piss take of like in Shrek when she does Pilgrim Song and all the birds attack and shit. There's
got to be a way to do it, and I think there's so many things you could do with it.
I do like the Breaking Bad one though, because that would rely on you to be clever, not just in terms of it. So it wouldn't just be in terms of dice rolls. It would be right to cover up my tracks. I need to do this, and as a DM. As a GM, if you could explain it to me logically, I would never make you roll for it. It would literally just be like a complete tactics game. As long as your character was able to do it. If there was a thing where you were like, I just need to yeet this truck over my head, obviously I'd be like, not really. But if you said, well, I need to hide this evidence, so why don't I just put this in this and then move this somewhere?
I feel like
what is it?
You could do something cool. Yeah. I think you could do a really cool game in Vampire the Masquerade where you're playing drug barons.
You don't even need to be the drug baron. You could play on the other side and be the DEA.
I think in terms of my one, I feel stupid.
Absolutely, you could.
I feel really, really dumb. So. The one that I'm thinking of, and everybody's these films are bad. I don't mean the films, because
well, you have to say it. You have to say it now.
No. Is Percy Jackson Percy Jackson, demigods in the real world, having to keep magic secret like from everyone, and like kind of like, and it would have like a piety system a bit like Feros, in the fact that the more your parent likes you, the more boons you have, but the more you piss off other gods, like the more troubles you have. So like one of the cool things in the books that they kind of mention in the films is that Percy Jackson is not allowed to fly, like ever. Like he cannot get on a plane, he cannot, like, he can jump, but the minute he stays off the ground for more than a couple of seconds, he's in Zeus's domain, and Zeus will strike him with a fucking thunderbolt because he hates him that much. Like, so they have this thing of like, that's why in the film they make him put on the shoes, like the Converse All Stars with wings, but actually it's not him in the books. So like, I like this idea of like not just having to like do all this cool epic like quest shit in the middle of like London or New York or wherever in secret, but also like this relationship management thing of like different gods who you've like trodden on the toes of, and like what will they do to me if they get a hold of me. Like I quite like that idea, and the fact that yeah, and like because also as well
the stealth aspect
This
of
idea
not
is
letting
great.
the rest of the world see what the
because
fuck you're
also as
doing.
well with the camp, like the cabins are all
I
divided
like
into
this
different
idea. You said you weren't.
families, so, like,
You said you didn't like it, but I like this idea. I don't think that's a silly
villa,
idea at all.
and Zeus's
Yeah.
villa, and all these different villas filled with kids who are all the same, who all have the same divine parent. So if you piss off that divine parent, you've also got to worry about the other kids, like around you, like, shit. And then what they don't tell you in the films is that there's also a Roman camp. Like there's the Greek camp, which is Percy Jackson, and then there's the Roman camp, which is literally an army camp. They aren't divided into like houses based on their parents. They're actually put into legions, and like they are the legion. They form an army, and they're put into different like squads and stuff.
I like how you're already coming up with expansion books that you can sell for your RPG.
So that would just be sick, because there's also that conflict as well, because the Greeks hate the Romans and the Romans hate the Greeks, because the Greeks are like individual freedom, like express yourself, and then the Romans are like for the good of the empire, duh. Like they just hate each other because the other sees one as suppressive, whilst the other one sees the other as rebellious. It's like really interesting, and apparently that's why World War II happened in the books. That's how they justify it. They're like, yeah, the Roman gods on one side, because they're the same as well. So like, there's this really odd thing in the books where this has become a Percy Jackson book review. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So like, Zeus is Jupiter, and Jupiter is Zeus.
Rome was like
depending
Italy.
on who he was when he made you as a kid, when he banged your mom, I guess. Like, who he was when he banged you. It changes like your powers and stuff. So Jupiter is a lot more like violent than Zeus. Zeus was just a bit pervy. Like,
Zeus, you just said that if Percy Jackson left the floor for longer than a second, would lightning bolt him.
That's because
he's the chill one.
He is the chill one, though. Genuinely, there is a moment where switching in between the two by accident, because there's Roman kids and Greek kids in the same area, so the gods keep switching between the two, and it gets really like confusing. Leon?
Google Fu. I can't talk today. I apologize to anybody listening to this for my slurred words, but I swear I am not under the influence of anything. Just a little bit of quick Google Fu. Demigods. Demigods is a... Shut up, Alexa. I didn't... Demigods is a new tabletop role-playing game about what happens when mortal life is turned upside down by the discovery of your divine heritage. Bringing mythology into the modern day, you'll take on the role of an epic hero and wield abilities and artifacts inherited from the divine against monsters, evil deities, and the mundane mortal world.
Or I would make an expand. I guess then with that one gone, I think my expansion. If I was to make an expansion, I would make an expansion of the Marvel Cinematic Universe for Mutants and Masterminds, like a proper one. Because you would, not gonna lie, you'd just make bank, like, because people are like, the MCU, yay! "Ooh, take my money!" Like, even though sometimes it's not even that good. I'm not gonna lie.
Controversial. Oh.
There are some films in it that are absolute bangers. Don't get me wrong. And then you get the Captain Marvel of the bunch, and you're just like, oh, this isn't even a terrible movie because it's female led. Before somebody tells me that, it's just a terrible movie.
I like that film. It's got Samuel L. Jackson in. I like Samuel L. Jackson.
Every Marvel film has Samuel L. He's just like all the Marvel films. Samuel L. Jackson.
If he's in it, it's pretty good, you know.
Fair enough. So last bit, like little subgenre of this topic, and then we'll move on to the deck of mini questions and start like wrapping up. Is there anything that you would basically, if it came up to you and when we're making a tabletop RPG game, is there anything you would go, oh fuck off? Like, no, go away. Like, is there any franchise that you are like, do not come into the tabletop RPG world? We do not want you, go away. Like, anything like that? I can think. No, play whatever you want. But
no, if somebody wants to play, I care. Play whatever you want. I don't care.
Really, come on. Like, you play what you want, do what you want to do, but I'm allowed to be judgy.
I was about to say one, and then I thought about it.
Let's phrase the question. Shall we phrase the question a different way then? Okay, so somebody has invited you to play an RPG based on X.
What was your thing?
What would the X be that would make you say,
I was
fuck
going to
off?
say, I thought of a terrible one, and then I thought about it some more, and I was like, I want to play that. That sounds fucking hilarious. The Bachelor RPG. Like of the TV show The Bachelor. And the DM could be the Bachelor, and you're all playing people trying to woo him. Oh, I was like, that's stupid. And then I was like, that's hilarious.
No, that's hilarious. The Floor is Lava, the RPG, I guess. Like, you actually have to play The Floor is Lava whilst playing the RPG.
That's a terrible idea.
It's just
I think
deck
the
saves.
one that I've in my genuine one, I've always thought of is modern combat. Like, if you tell me that you want to basically play, like, I don't know, World War II, anything like that.
World War II.
Cool. If you turn around and go, there's a Call of Duty RPG game, or Gears of War is another one. Like, I love Gears of War, the video game, but the minute you said that there's a tabletop RPG of Gears of War, I'm just like, yeah, I'm out. Like, I'm done. Like, because it's just that would just be a slugfest of fights, and there's no real character development in those sorts of, like.
I don't know, man. I disagree with you on Gears of War. Call of Duty, I absolutely agree. But Gears of War, I don't know, you could make a solid RPG out of Gears of War.
Like,
the Call of Duty where you're on the spaceship and you get to, like, go and choose your missions could work as an RPG and could be pretty cool. Most of the Call of Duties are pretty bland, but, like, that one could work as an RPG, I think.
Yeah,
but,
I suppose that would be just your standard Starfinder or Titan's Grave. You could play that in Titan's Grave, I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit more like hard sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think you could conceivably play anything and make it like cool. I think as long as you as long as you like know like why you want to do that as a GM, I think you could probably make it cool. I'm sure you could come up with some scenario in which modern combat and decision making like all pull in together. Like maybe like Ghost Recon Wildlands, where you're like a special forces team, like insert into a country and you've got like free reign to take out a cartel. You could do some cool stuff with that. I think like you could conceivably make any RPG concept fun as long as you know what makes it fun. If you get me.
Yeah. So if you could.
Is that you agreeing to go away and think of a
I could run a Bachelor RPG system in Fate tomorrow. Don't even try me on that.
Listen, that's Ben's. We've got two Ben Kickstarters.
I'm going to try you.
We've got Musical the RPG.
Bachelor the Fate module.
Yeah. Oh my god! What has happened? What have we done? But
We've made money, Addison. We've made money.
We could make some serious bank. I've got the ideas from the settings episode up in here. I've now got the RPG systems. I'm there. I'm ready. I'm ready to steal a
Hear me out. These are called The Bachelor.
Oh my god. Oh, that's so funny. I'm actually like in pain at the thought of one throwing pizza as a check, roll to yeet, and Bachelor the RPG. Oh, it hurts. Okay, so Ben, thank you very much for coming on, talking to us about. We've got our penultimate segment, which I'm going to introduce properly in a minute, and then we'll roll out, do the outro. You can shout out anything you want, but Ben, the first thing I've got to ask you is: are you ready to face the deck? Are you ready?
Having watched one of these segments and seeing how difficult the questions were, sure. I'm sure I can make a lot of enemies.
Some of them are spicy. There are some spicy takes in there. You're just going to have to bite down on the jalapeno, I'm afraid. So, it's time for Ben, me, and Leon to face the Deck of Many Questions. The Deck of Many Questions is our community-suggested question pool that we randomly select each week using a dice roll, and we try and make it so all three of us get a question, but sometimes when time's unforgiving, we cannot. So this week, I think all three of us can manage one.
Yeah.
And then if you want to submit to the Deck of Many Questions, you can at us on Twitter, DM us on Twitter, DM us on Instagram, tag us on Instagram, Facebook. You can leave a review on Spotify now, because that's a thing. I always forget about that, and that still blows my mind. YouTube comments, but wherever you can reach us, send us in your questions. Stack the deck for or against us, and we will quite happily shout you out and give you credit for your questions.
Can you accept homing pigeons yet, or is that?
The homing pigeon thing is still in the works because Jen won't leave the windows open. So, Leon, have you got the dice?
Yes, the first question is number
Guest
5.
always goes first. So, the question 5. This is the best. Right. So this was submitted by Troy, Ben, and the question is: you've got to fuck your way out.
Jesus Christ!
And you've got to fuck your way out, and it's something from the Monster Manual. What are you picking?
Right, let's grab the book.
What are you grabbing? So, what monster would you fuck your way out of, basically?
I mean, I think the succubus is the obvious easy answer, but we won't go for that.
No,
the abyssal worm looks like that's a lot.
It would rock your world. It would rock your world.
I mean, guys, there is one in here that's very obvious.
What's that?
The Bone Naga. It's got bone in the name. I think we have to go for the one that calls itself the Bone Naga, you know?
The Bone Naga. So Ben, so my next question is, Ben, are you the top or the bottom? This is the best question that anybody's ever been given. I think you're like the perfect person for this question.
I guess I bone the Bone Naga.
So Ben is boning the Bone Naga. Clip it, Leon. It needs to be it.
Please don't clip this, Leon. I implore you.
Leon, who's going next? Me or you?
Would you like to be odd or even?
I'll take odds this time because I always take evens.
Okay, then I'm taking question 14.
Question 14.
If this is something like what's your favourite pizza topping, I'm going to be pissed.
What is the most important thing you think you made up in a campaign? So, what is the most important thing you've ever made up in a campaign? Like, I'm guessing this is like improv. So, what's the most important thing you've ever improv?
A lot of improv. What's the most important thing?
Yeah.
Do you want to take this one? I'll take the next one.
No, this is your question.
Whoa! I didn't know that was an option.
It's not an option. Okay then, so we'll come back to you. We'll let you buffer, and then I'll roll my question, and I'll do.
Question 27.
27. What makes a good player in your opinion? Submitted by Paige. So, what makes a good player in my opinion?
Is that?
No. they've got a right.
You've really screwed ourselves in the algorithm with this.
This has not been our most professional podcast, and the only thing that's changed is Ben.
We're gonna fuck ourselves in the algorithm with this. Everyone's gonna be swearing. Oh god.
No, in all seriousness. Well, in all seriousness, what makes a good player, in my opinion, is just listening. Like, listen, be attentive, not just to like the DM. I'm not being like, you must listen to me, but like to your other players as well. Like, listen to them, think about what they've got to say, and like respond in kind. Don't just like shout over them. Don't just like hog the spotlight. Let them have a moment, then you take a moment, and then stuff like that. Because I always think that the most problematic players are the people who only think about themselves as or their character, and this goes back to the whole it's what my character would do argument. No, if it fucks over 4 other people, they probably wouldn't do that. I'm sorry. Like, you have logical thought, so listen and be understanding and be empathetic and just play as a team. As Leon's famous catchphrase is, bring a bloody adventurer to the party. Like, don't be a dick. And that's what makes a good player. Don't be a dick. Listen to what other people have to say and give them opportunities as well. Leon, most important thing you ever...
So this isn't an important thing, but it's something that springs to mind that I had to completely do on the fly. Mostly due to my own doing, which it usually is. So we were on a ship. I was using the Ghost of Soapmarsh rules for ship travel. Rolled a random encounter at sea. Whirlpool, fine. If you get Whirlpool, you then have to roll for the size of the Whirlpool. Rolled the biggest size Whirlpool, which means it has the biggest difficulty check to get out of. Players failed, so they're going in this Whirlpool.
Oh god.
If the players fail to get out of the Whirlpool, you then have to roll for a destination for where that Whirlpool will take you. Elemental plane of water.
Oh god. Oh no.
It's like level 3 at this point.
It just goes from bad to worse. Like, water always killed me. Water is definitely going to kill me.
So I'm like, oh shit. Fine, and you know how I love my random tables. I always lean into them. So I'm just thinking, shit. Well, I guess we're going to the elemental plane of water. I know nothing about the elemental plane of water. I've never read that section of the DMG.
Oh,
so I'm like, guys, I really need to go to the toilet. Let's take a 20-minute break. I don't even go to the toilet. I just sit there and quickly read the elemental plane of water section of the DMG and quickly do a quick browse through the wikis. So on the fly, I make up this, the elemental plane of water is just this huge, it's just this planet that's just one huge sea. It's just an endless expanse of water. They emerge there. They're stranded there for like 5 days. They're thirsty. They're hungry. They haven't seen anything because none of them can swim. They're all land-dwelling species. Eventually, what are those big water people called?
Triton?
No. They're like gin, but water.
Oh, Mirids or Mirads.
Marids, yes. Yeah. Eventually, a band of Marids comes to meet them, and they're like, "What the fuck are you doing here? What the fuck is this vessel that you're floating on the top of our world, essentially?" So the Marids offer them some apparatus so that they can breathe underwater, and they take them down to this huge underwater city, so that they can meet a powerful person, I can't remember who it was, and give them a spell to get them back to their own plane. I should also mention that only 2 of them are going down to the city. The rest of the party are still back up on the ship waiting. So whilst the rest of the party are going down to this Marid city, the rest of the party get attacked by a dragon turtle whilst they're on the boat. And then I planned it so that just as the dragon turtles is about to destroy the ship, the other half of the party returns with the spell that will take them back to the prime plane, and yeah. I kind of did it so it was guaranteed to succeed, because otherwise, it would have been the end of the campaign. But yeah, that's the thing that I've had to improvise on the fly.
Again. They never went in water again. Like, do you want a bath, sir? No, no.
Instead of taking a boat, they just poured dirt to make bridges everywhere.
Oh yeah, and one of them got possessed by an aboleth, because you can't go to the elemental plane of water without encountering an aboleth.
That's fair.
That's fair enough. Alright then, that is our talk about other systems apart from D&D. Systems that you might not believe are out there. But as Leon has proven, if you do a bit of Google Foo, you'll find them. So thanks, Ben, for coming and hanging out with us, taking the time to talk to us about these other systems, having some great ideas. Is there anything you want to shout out? Anything that you do on the internet, anywhere that people can find you on the internet? Now's your chance to shout that out.
Right, yeah, thank you for having me, guys. It was certainly an experience at the end there. Had a really good time talking to you guys. If you want to see more from me, I'm the Flickering Torch on YouTube. There's a few podcasts with Addison on there. There is a few how to play videos. There's an opinion piece on role-playing game clubs. And soon there's going to be an actual play of Knights Black Agents on Mondays. I think that's it from me.
Okay, well, again, thank you, Ben. Thank you, Leon. Thank you, me. And if you want to start decking any things against us, for us, please reach out via any of our social medias. Leon, you know the drill. Let them know where they can find us.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram at @PodOManyThings. You can find us on Twitter at PodOManyThings. Or you could find us on... What's the other one? Anchor, yes. The link of which will be in the description beneath this video.
And all of Ben's links and stuff will be in the video description as well. So, wherever you are, whenever you are, thanks for chilling with us. Hope you're chilled out. And
also, Wizards of the Coast, give me fucking Dark Sun, I swear to God.
And with that note, see you in a bit.
All aboard the E-Bussy.